This is Speaking with the Enemy on the Ticats Audio Network. Here is Louis Butko.
Yes, the show is Speaking with the Enemy, Week 1 edition, and the Week 1 opponent for the Ticats, of course, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And to discuss that, we bring in the play-by-play voice of the Blue Bombers, CJOB's DT on OB, Derek Taylor. DT, I want to start with this. I DM'd you. I said, Zach Collaros, CFL top player, number one. Sure enough, last night he was. No question. I mean, this guy is the king until somebody knocks him off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just no doubt. I had a real time trying to figure out who were number 2 through 10 because to a certain degree they were all interchangeable, and that's a tough list to put together when you put a 40-man ballot for the top 50. But it's just clear it's Zach Collaros. Like I don't know. Well, I kind of do know if this Bomber team didn't have him, it's now kind of a 9-horse race for the title. But in the meantime, because they have Zach, and because to me Zach stands kind of at the moment head and shoulders above all the other quarterbacks in the league. It's kind of, to me, there's a significant favorite for the 2023 season, and it comes down to Zach.
Well, even a guy that I asked you about was Dalton Schoen, and I'll admit that I didn't vote for the CFL Top 50. I was invited to by Dave Naylor. I just hadn't been down at practice, and I like to talk to the guys themselves about who they see. So I hadn't been down a whole lot, but Dalton Schoen, I would have had in my top 5, if not number 2. I mean, what a rookie season that he had. He finished in the top 5, I believe, overall. But what is it about Dalton Schoen? How can he take his incredible year last year and bring it up a level?
Yeah, so what it was last year is, I mean, he was a guy who showed up at rookie camp and went, okay, well, here's a bunch of receivers, and there's number 83. Okay, fine. And then throughout the season, he got a decent start. But when Greg Ellingson went down with an injury after he had a monster game against Calgary, all of a sudden Schoen exploded. And the number I will probably throw out till the pressure. So Zach Collaros, the quarterback, when he was out of the pocket under pressure, Dalton Schoen had more yards than any 3 non-Bomber receivers. Broke down. I found a gap. Boom, I'm done. 80. Here's an 81-yard touchdown against the Elks. Boom, it's done. The other part was he really took to the waggle very quickly. Like you would watch a game midpoint of the season and on, and if he's supposed to be full speed at the snap because that's what his route calls for, he was, in that, you get that little buffer zone as well. He was at the line the second Zach called for the snap. He was maybe a hair across it because they give you that buffer. He commanded that waggle so well. His ability to decelerate is something you notice at practice when you watch him compared to other receivers on the team as well. There's so much going for them that I'm surprised he didn't stick in the NFL. I don't know what NFL teams were looking for, but we as Bomber fans were delighted that Dalton Schoen is back for this year.
Yeah, and you and I have, I'm sure, seen our fair share of guys who have just struggled with that waggle, especially making that jump, from college or from, kicking around in the NFL to come up here. So to see Dalton, he's going to be one of those players that you gotta watch. How much is last year's Grey Cup talked about? Because you go back to when they won 2 in a row, it was business as usual the next season. But there's got to be a bit of a chip on the shoulder knowing the three-peat was that close, but you couldn't pull it off. Is there any talk of the 2022 Grey Cup around the hallways?
We asked about it the first couple of days, and I don't think there is now. I think head coach Mike O'Shea put it pretty well on day one, where he said, if losing the Grey Cup is fuel, you should have burned off that fuel by now. You should have used that to, your off-season workouts and getting prepared for training camp and stuff like that. We'll keep talking about it on the radio because this was the chance. Three-peats don't happen. This is potentially a historic run for the Bombers in in all of the CFL, of any CFL team. This could be one of the great runs that we're in the midst of. We won't know till it's over and Collaros retires and on and on and on. But yeah, the thought that if it was, you should have used it in the offseason. Now we're back to business and we've got schemes to learn and we've got teams coming in that we need to take care of.
What's the biggest question mark around this Bombers team entering the season? Is there one?
I came into camp thinking There are, and that's the interesting part. What the Bombers have is they have a ton of star players they were able to get back, and this is my perception of it. They have a ton of star players they were able to get back, but when you have a lot of star players, Collaros and Jeff Coat and Jefferson and Stanley Bryant, Jamarcus Hardrick and Adam Bighill and on, those guys come with big salaries, which means there's less money for the other guys to come around. So you're going to have to fill some spots with minimum salary players. You'd rather have Casey Sales back for $200,000, but there's a salary cap, right, that you have to abide by. So you have to get performances from minimum salary players. The one thing I thought coming into camp and the thing I think coming out of camp is that back six is going to get tested. They've had some injuries already in camp. Winston Rose is walking around in a boot. Well, sorry, Winston's not in a boot. Winston is out. Jamal Parker was in a boot a couple days ago. He's back to just walking around, but both guys are a ways away from practicing again. So Dietrich Nichols, rock solid at the one halfback. Brandon Alexander, rock solid at the safety. Alden Darby, it has that Sam spot. He's not giving it up. The other three spots, what's going to happen in that defensive backfield, and what are teams going to do with that? Who are they going to attack with? I don't know, if you have a Duke Williams or a Tim White, which guys are you going to go after and see what they're truly? I left camp going, okay, the weak spots to me are on defense, which we're kind of not used to having that be the narrative around the Bombers, but back six and American defensive tackle are going to be spots that we're going to watch quite intently and go, okay, how are they doing? Because those, if they don't cost you games, you've found a way to cover for the fact that you're not as strong there as you're used to being.
I look at this Winnipeg team, and it just seems like every year, pre-pandemic, which makes it feel so much longer ago, that they've been so good for so long. You mentioned it. We're in the midst of it. We won't know. Is this team a dynasty, even having lost last year, or is that something time will tell? If they go again to the Grey Cup, I'm getting my prediction out of the way. I think it's going to be a Ticats Bombers final. I just don't see it. I just don't see, I just see the storylines fitting too well. The motivated quarterback, it's just, I think the Ticats are coming out of the East. That's my opinion. I'll get your thoughts in a second. But this Bombers team, back to that, is just, are they a dynasty right now? If this year they went 10-8, made the West final or something like that, would we still look at them as a dynasty?
Oh, I think if everybody's back for 2024, I think we would, right? Because they still have, you just look at, we're all just comparing rosters at this point, right? Yeah. Because the preseason is, it reveals a couple players, but it doesn't tell us much about the teams. It is. This is 3 years they've been to the Grey Cup, 2 times they won it, and they're the favorite to win it in year 4. And by the way, their quarterback is signed for 2 more years after this year, and he's going to the Hall of Fame. Right. So I absolutely think it is. We don't know how great it is. Right. The Bombers had a run from 1958 to 1962 where they won 4 out of 5 Grey Cups. They missed the one in the middle season, which sounds a lot like what they might be in the midst of right now. Right. They won 2. They lost. They didn't win the third one, and they won the next 2. So they win 23-24. No one would argue that the 58 to 62 Bombers were a dynasty. I think we are, just because there hasn't been the exodus of talent looking for giant contracts in other spots, deserved giant contracts, I should make the point, in other spots. All these players are back, and all these veterans are back. So, yeah, it really feels like we are, because apart from one team in the CFL, I really don't know who challenges the Bombers, ... if the Bombers stay healthy this year.
Yeah. Because the one thing you're hearing that, and hearing the number of guys back, 47 guys who played at least one game last season for the Bombers. Guys want to be there. I'm sure you heard about some guys who were offered more somewhere else. It sounds like that starts with the I was going to say the C word, but culture is that word I was thinking of. And, I hear it so much in Hamilton, and guys who come here and guys who talk about, I maybe had an offer somewhere else. What is it about the culture that's been created there the last few years, with the leadership, both on the field and off the field? What is it that's gotten people to buy in, other than the fact that, hey, if you come here, if you stay here, you're going to have a pretty good shot at competing for the Grey Cup?
Yeah, winning is obviously going to be a big part of it. But I feel like, and just from talking to guys, talking to players, you just feel like they've built a workplace that you'd be very happy to go to as an employee, right? And speaking of the locker room as the workplace, I think you've probably had it, Louis. I've certainly had it. Folks listening have probably had it, where you go, you know what? One or two people can really change the tenor of the place that you work. If they're grumpy and they're bad people, kind of don't want to go to work. And if it's a happy workplace where the bosses take care of you, you're kind of happy to go to work, right? You really don't mind that 8 to 10 hours a day where you're working. So I think they've really focused on bringing in good people. And then when you bring in good people and then you give them a chance to play with, I mean, you get a chance to play with Zach Collaros as well, right? That's a real draw for receivers. For example, Kenny Lawler went to the Elks last year for all the money in the world, and bless his heart, he got paid, and he said, yeah, it was probably about the money. And he just absolutely positively felt he had to come back for 2023, to the point where he took 70 or 80 grand less than he could have got on the open market to come back and play in Winnipeg. And to me, that says a ton. Rasheed Bailey, who we all kind of thought the Bombers would lose when Kenny Lawler signed, Bailey took, I'm going to guess, $40,000 to $50,000 less than he could have had on the open market to come back and play in Winnipeg, because he loves the guys he works with. This receiving core, a lot of these guys have been together for many years. Dalton Schoen being the one guy, and I guess Carlton Agadosi, who are just newer to the CFL, but multiple years. And by the way, Jamarcus Hardrick's still here, and he's thoroughly entertaining me at practice, and I love that guy, and he's taking care of me. And look at all these veterans, and you just look at this, and Buck Pierce is an innovative mind. Let's play on offense. Or, man, there's nothing Richie Hall can't teach me. He knows everything. I'm going to stick around in that defense. I'm Willie Jefferson. I could have all the money in the world to go to the East, but I'm not doing it because I want to stay here. And maybe there's a small part of it. The guys look good in blue. There's just so much around it, right, that they've created that you go, like, just Jackson Jeffcoat, Willie Jefferson, Stanley Bryant, Jamarcus Hardrick. I've never sat down and tried to guess until now how much more money they could get playing somewhere else. But I'm going to say between the four of them, $250,000 they could probably get extra playing somewhere else. Yeah. But they decide to leave that on the table, come back to Winnipeg, and that's to have fostered an atmosphere where that's something we can all relate to. What would you trade for money? How much money would you trade to have a better workplace? And it feels like that's where the success comes from, in creating an incredible workplace for these guys.
I want to get back to Zach Collaros, and I know what station I'm on here in the Ticats audio network, and this might ruffle some feathers here, but when I look at Zach, and maybe I'm too close to it, but I think he is one of the great stories of the last 25, 30 years in the CFL, only because that every single person had written him off. Teams had written him off. Every time he took the field, you got the sense that he was one hit away from it all being over. That was something that people used to describe Zach back in the day. Not anymore. We talk about him as the MOP, the future Hall of Famer. Having been close to it and having seen the player he has become, what's your overall assessment of Zach? You mentioned a Hall of Famer, but I mean, we're talking about one of the all-time great quarterbacks in the CFL.
Oh, absolutely. And the story is like you say, is even better. I was in Sask. The first game I called for the Saskatchewan Roughriders was the game against Hamilton, where Collaros got KO'd, and that precipitated his trade to the Argos and then to the Bombers. But went to a Grey Cup with Hamilton. Things were going great. Should have been the MOP. Well, was going to be the MOP that year, but tore up his knee. Comes back the following year. The year after that, the Hamilton offense was not good. I think he started 0-8, and just defense or tackles getting turnstile. And Collaros has no time to do anything. Goes to Sask. I don't know if they really cared about who they put out at quarterback and cared about supporting them. Things were as bad as they could have been. 19. One of the first things I said on Saskatchewan radio was, I'm the governor of Collaros Island. I really think that Zach is a star. It's looked bad last year, but I think this guy's absolutely a star. And here's reasons A, B, C, and D. He gets knocked out of the game, the first game of that season. Cody Fajardo goes on a rocket ride. So Zach's traded to Toronto, doesn't play in Toronto, but rehabs there. When he's ready, he's traded to Winnipeg. That trade broke when I was live on Saskatchewan radio. Saskatchewan was in first place. Winnipeg was in third, I believe. And I said, I am officially afraid of the Bombers now because I think this is the perfect matchup of quarterback, offensive, like protection, which he's been craving for so long.
Yeah.
And then, he throws one spin pass to Darvin Adams in the end zone. And we went, oh no, the 2019 Grey Cup's going to Winnipeg. Oh gosh, that's going to hurt, which is much better when you're the voice of the Bombers now. And just watching the last couple of years, you go, this is exactly when in my mind, I when I looked at how I hoped it would work out as the governor of Collaros Island, it's exactly this. Like, he's able to freelance and the things he did when he was a younger guy for the Ticats, right? He's able to freelance and create stuff and just invite that little bit of extra pressure to get the pass off. And I'm going to scramble out to this side, and that's fine. You're chasing me, but now I'm going to huck it downfield because this is the way I love to play ball. And the receivers know where to be at the right time, and they know when to come back to the sticks, and they know when to go deep. It's just the perfect marriage of everything. And it's one of the things that I will claim for the rest of my life that, I kind of knew this was going to be good because I was on the other side of a rivalry, and I was cursing the fact that the Bombers traded virtually nothing to get Zach Collaros and a guy who would be a kicker for a couple of years. It's an incredible piece of work that Kyle Walters did in that trade I guess it was the deadline in 2019.
Yeah. It was like the only one of the only deadline deals, and it was an afterthought basically on deadline deal. Oh yeah, and Zach Collaros is going to Winnipeg because I remember that day too. And I was there that 0-8 year. I was there at the end of the season. He tossed me his hoodie, kind of signaling that he was on his way out. But I've always been a fan of Zach, and great to see what he's doing. It's unfortunate he's had to do it against the Ticats so frequently, but that's okay. Speaking of great quarterbacks, I want to get your assessment on Bo Levi Mitchell, someone who is a year younger than Zach Collaros, which I like pointing out to people who sometimes forget that. What's your assessment on Bo? Obviously, you haven't seen much tape on him, and what he's been able to do with the Ticats, but what do you think we should expect from big number 19 this year in Hamilton?
I wish I had a real good answer for this because it would educate my season-long wagering as it goes along, because that's the question the whole CFL needs to see the answer to, right? Is which Bo is right? Like, he hasn't been right since about 2018, and it's injuries, and it's unfortunately other injuries, broken leg, shoulder things. And then I kind of don't know what 2022 was in Calgary. I kind of don't know what Calgary was looking for, because Bo likes to rip the ball down the field. And what they created with Jake Mayer, if they were trying to get Bo to do that, I see why they benched Bo, because who wants to throw 35% of their passes within 2 yards of the line of scrimmage? Like, it was such a ball-controlled attack with Jake Mayer. It was the shortest depth of target I've ever recorded for a quarterback over a season. I go, okay, well, I see why you wouldn't want Bo for this. So that he got a fresh start, I think is fantastic as a CFL fan, and that he's got what appears to be different kinds of receivers, right? Tim White can do so many things. And if Duke Williams is right, and Duke Williams has a ton of doubters last year. He's a guy who was number 2 on my top 50 ballot last year, and then didn't appear on my ballot this year for reasons we can all remember how it was in Sask. Duke Williams, at his base, if you wanted to say, oh, hey, we have a one-on-one and I'm going to throw up to Duke Williams, at his base, he can do that. There's so much more he can do. You go, okay, well, that exists. All right, let's work with that. He's got a lot of stuff to work with. I'm curious to see what run game they help enhance him with, because Hamilton has been inconsistent in using its running backs over the years, or at least one dominant back over the last, since 2018. So I really think that if you let Bo be Bo, like, just let him rip it down the field. Let Bo cook, whatever you want it to be.
There it
right?
is.
Just let him rip the ball down the field. Let him do his thing. he's in those times, like before 2019 and the injuries and whatever happened with his shoulder, he was a pretty accurate passer. It's kind of gone away, and his completion percentage is in the lower half of the 60s last year. But, he's a reasonably accurate quarterback. He clearly knows what's going on in the Canadian Football League. The Bombers were terrified. Well, terrified is my word. The Bombers did not blitz him virtually at all last year. In 2 meetings, they blitzed him 13 times, which is an incredibly low number, because they went, this guy might rip us in half if we blitz him too much. Yeah. Again, my interpretation. Okay, that's interesting. He's still teams are still wary of him, let's say. So yeah, it looks like Figueroa Van Zyl is much better than, what was it, Jordan Swindle and whoever else was at tackle back in that 2017 season for Collaros. It looks like the Hamilton offense is set up to let Bo be the best version of himself. I just come into 2023 going, after 3 years of it not being, the top quarterback in the league, I don't know what Bo truly has and what was just a product of being nicked and whatever was happening with the Calgary attack.
Before we let you go, I want to get your thoughts on the Jonathan Kongbo trade. Ticats getting him back for the Dane Evans pick that they sent or that they got for that deal. How do you think he fits in Hamilton, and just your overall assessment on the deal?
I woke up that morning and went, I don't understand why this happened, right? And then details leak out and you go, okay, well, that makes sense. But I just woke up one morning, we've traded Jonathan Kongbo for a conditional draft pick. All right, that you had him for a week, I guess. That was good. I've returned things to Costco. Is that what that is? But the team traded to made perfect sense, right? Because Kwaku Boateng and Winnipeg's finest Mason Bennett and what Federico, our defensive lineman, that are Canadian. So, okay, we've established we can go Canadian at this defensive end spot. And then, oh, by the way, our American defensive ends aren't bad either. I really thought it was quite bold of the Ticats to go and do that and reinforce a spot that to me wasn't going to be a problem. But hey, if you can make it better, let's do it. I had to go back and look because we were doing a thing in the pregame show for the second preseason game on CJOB. And it was the difference in Winnipeg's defensive line and how they get pressure on the quarterback. And from 21 to 22, it fell off dramatically for the Bombers. And part of that was Steven Richardson was a little better than Casey Sayles, though Sayles was fantastic. But the big deal was they're getting about 4 fewer quarterback pressures a game from their defensive ends. And what changed from 2021 to 2022 with the Bombers was Jonathan Kongbo left for the NFL. Like Kongbo was 13th in the league in quarterback pressures that year, and I think he missed 6 games. Like he can terrorize quarterbacks. So I'm always on the guy of, it might not end in a sack, but it's going to cause real problems. So if you can add that guy to, if I have my fingers crossed, Kwaku Boateng is back healthy again, I'll always cheer for Winnipeggers like Mason Bennett. This is a defense that is going to absolutely terrorize quarterbacks, and then when they're done terrorizing quarterbacks, the linebackers are going to clean the rest of the things up if the defensive backfield hasn't already taken the ball away, right? I think it was a fantastic pickup, and to get a Canadian, I mean, salary probably plays into it at this point, but to get a Canadian potential star defensive end in exchange for a depth American quarterback is essentially the trade. That is to me great business from the Ticats.
Yeah, and of course, we've mentioned Casey Sayles a couple of times. Of course, he's on the Ticats this year too, and it's a much different looking Ticats. It was one of those camps where I had to have my depth chart out quite a bit because I was used to that consistency that we had seen, that you see in Winnipeg this year. But it seems like it's all going to come together. I guess we will see together on Friday night. DT, I appreciate this as always, man. Always more educated after you and I talk. So thank you for making some time this morning. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, brother.
My thanks to Derek Taylor, play-by-play voice of the Bombers on CJOB, for joining me today. And my thanks to you as well. Of course, we could not do these shows without your support. So make sure you like and subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network so you never miss this show or any of the other great offerings, including a brand new episode of Tiger Cats Game Day, which you can catch Friday as Courtney, Steven, and Mike Daly get you set for the game, and a brand new episode of Ticats this week. Luke Tasker, RJ Broadhead get you set, and make sure to check out Ticats Today every day, where Braden Neville brings you the latest from practice and the latest from around the league. That'll do it for me today. I am back next week and catch a brand new episode of Speaking with the Enemy as part of Tiger Cats pregame with Bubba O'Neill and Andy Fantus. Otherwise, I'll talk to you next week right here on the Ticats Audio Network.